After 40 Tree of Whispers in a row, I have some answers to some questions that you may have about the quote unquote primo leveling experience in Diablo 4. Are they worth to do in Tier 3 and Tier 4? What changes can Blizzard make to make them even better? Should I actually run them over Nightmare Dungeons at the beginning of Tier 3? Finally, are they out of date?
It's time to find out. The racers are locking into the grid.
Speed. I am speed.
Really? You are speed? Then Francesco is triple speed. Francesco is triple speed. Ho ho! Francesco likes this McQueen. He's really getting him into the zone.
Now, I want to work backwards in this video compared to the Cellars video. I mention that because this is going to be a direct comparison to my leveling experience spamming one cellar 300 times in a row. Don't worry, you don't have to watch that video because I will be putting some of the information in this one. But you can, if you want to, after this video, go and check it out. But I want to work backwards. I want to start at Tier 3, which is actually something I didn't get to in my cellar video. Mostly because I think this may be a little bit of a hot take. Tree of Whispers are not worth it to do until you hit Tier 3. If you are trying to go with the fastest leveling strategy, at least of the two, Cellars or Tree of Whispers, Tree of Whispers are not worth it to do until you hit Tier 3. Here's why. Even when you have Nightmare Dungeons from level 50 to level 55, I decided to do Tree of Whispers instead. It took me 3 hours and 35 minutes to hit 55, and that was 10 out of my 40 Tree of Whispers. The breakdown of the levels was actually pretty surprising. So far, I have leveled 3 characters from level 50 to 60. This is the fastest level 55 I've hit, even with one of my characters leveling post Nightmare Dungeon buff. They increased the density of Nightmare Dungeons by 50%. This was still faster. Before the buff, Nightmare Dungeons would get me about a level an hour. After the buff, it sped it up by about 10 minutes. But this, I was getting around 1 level every 40 minutes. Not only that, in my opinion, it was just more fun to do. Running the same dungeon over and over and running the same cellar over and over, there is a very valid argument to be made that Tree of Whispers is just a better leveling experience because it's more fun. And if it's a bit slower, it can be more fun because you're traveling the world. You get to do more than just dungeons. Granted, the dungeons are faster than doing the world event. So there can be an argument made there. And there's an argument made here in Tier 3. Not only, in my experience, has it been faster than Nightmare Dungeons, at least up until level 55. Once you get to 55 with how the open world and dungeons work now, you start out leveling the dungeons. So I would recommend not doing this past 55. I think at level 55 is a good spot to start doing Nightmare Dungeons. Not only is it great XP, but you also get a glyph with every Tree of Whispers box you do in Tier 3. I have gotten 3 out of the 4 glyphs that I need for my late game build, just doing these Tree of Whispers. In Nightmare Dungeons, it's random if you get a glyph. You could open a random chest and it'll pop out a glyph, or you could get 0 glyphs over the Nightmare Dungeon. It's a decent way to actually target farm them, and you have plenty of glyph XP on your journey to level 100 that you don't need to start Nightmare Dungeon leveling right away, especially if you start with Nightmare Dungeon Tier 1. You only get 4 XP for your glyph from completing a level 1 Nightmare Dungeon. So you can afford to... Oh, mind blank. You can afford to delay your Nightmare Dungeon journey, in my opinion. The XP you get per turn-in on Tier 3 is starting at 354,000 XP. That was enough to basically, as long as I had about a quarter of the Paragon point in my XP bar, I would basically guarantee to get that Paragon point from a Tree Whisper turn-in. But that is about where I believe that Tree of Whispers' usefulness in being the fastest leveling strategy ends. Because we're going to talk about Tier 2. I'm just going to throw up the level breakdown with a side-by-side of Tree of Whispers and Cellars. As you can see, across the board, Tree of Whispers are slower than when I did all of my Cellars in a row. And I believe I know why. Part of it is Blizzard's fault. Travel time. Now, I'm not saying they should add a teleport to every Tree of Whisper dungeon. No. I just want to ask Blizzard, why do we not have all of the waypoints that aren't locked behind strongholds unlocked? Why do we have to go and click them ourselves? It single-handedly delayed my time to get to most of my dungeons by about 2 to 3 minutes. And in 2 to 3 minutes, you can do about 3 cellars. And as I said in my cellar video, around level 40, that's worth around 7,000 XP without an elixir. Speaking of, all of the Tree of Whispers I did, I had an elixir on for. Every single one of them. In my cellar video, I only had an elixir on about 60% of the time. So even while getting that extra 5% XP buff to make it 13% in total with the Season's Blessings, it was slower than Cellars. Imagine if I had run an elixir in all of my Cellars. Yeah, you can start to see the issue that I'm having with Tree of Whispers. Normally, I'm more objective in these videos, but I'm just disappointed. I was told Tree of Whispers were faster. I was told Tree of Whispers were funner. I agree with that. On that one. But they just aren't faster. And Cellars aren't even the fastest way to level. I saw a Wowhead article that a Diablo 4 streamer, I believe his name is Rax, he found a dungeon that you can level to level 40 in 2 hours. I got to level 20 in 2 hours. The reset dungeon button, I believe, is a good thing to have in the game. I want to preface this. I believe it's a good thing to have in the game. But I think it makes Tree of Whispers out of date. Especially since Blizzard refused to give us all the waypoints unlocked immediately. The travel time is slower. The dungeons are slower. If you want to do everything in the dungeon, it'll take you 15 to 25, somewhere in that range, to complete one Whisper dungeon. And you have to do 2 per tree. But if you want to just breeze through the dungeon and complete it as fast as possible, you run into the issue that you're going to run out of those dungeons because they are time gated. You could run some extra cellars, but if you're going to run cellars, A, they're only worth 1 point, and B, the travel time again. Why not just run one cellar over and over and over again until those dungeons come up? Now that might be a decent strategy. I didn't test it, and you could do this on your own if you really wanted to. What if you combined my 2 leveling strategies? What if you completed the 4 night not Nightmare Dungeons, the 4 Tree of Whisper dungeons as fast as possible, and then while you're waiting for them to respawn, spam the same cellar over and over. Maybe that's actually the fastest way to do it. I could probably test that. Probably not in Season 1. I'm gonna be honest, I am getting a little bit burnt out after my 4th character and 3rd odd leveling strategy. Not exactly odd. 4th exhausting leveling strategy. But to further compare why I think Tier 3 Tree of Whispers are just so much better. So if you remember back, at level 50, I got 345,000 XP from a Tree of Whispers turn-in. At level 48, I got 84k. 84,000 XP. That was only 14% of the XP I needed to get to level 48. Or 49. They did recently buff in Season 1 the Tier 3 and Tier 4 turn-in. And that is exactly why I think it makes Tier 3 a lot more worth it to do for Tree of Whispers. And the final issue I have with Tier 2, the world boss. In Tier 3, the world boss dies in about 5 minutes. In Tier 2, it usually takes the full 15-minute timer. It's not exactly worth it. Which is, I don't know. I love that Tree of Whisper gives you so many options on way to complete Tree of Whispers, but the fastest way is just spamming dungeons. You want to try to avoid spamming dungeons. That's the whole point of Tree of Whispers, so you can do other content. But you're stuck doing the same content, and there's faster leveling methods by spamming better dungeons than Tree of Whispers dungeons. I don't know. I apologize for not being as objective in this video as in my Cellars video, but I'm just disappointed. I'm just disappointed in, I guess, Blizzard. If Blizzard wants people to stop using degenerate leveling methods, they should just make Tree of Whispers the best. Give us a full level when we complete a Tree of Whisper. That'd be great. I'm sure a lot of people would come back and play the game. Anyways, that is my Tree of Whispers finding. In my next video, we will be exploring what if Blizzard makes us farm reputation in Season 2? Is the best strategy to do all of the strongholds in a row? Find out in that video. Thank you for watching. My name is Cynical, signing off.